What's going on, everyone? It's been a minute. We are back today with a new deck tech talking about Gorion, the Wise Mentor. So, really quick, he is green, white, blue, 3/4 human wizard with vigilance. Here's his effect. Whenever you cast an adventure spell, you may copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, we're talking about adventures. This is an adventure tribal deck. What does that mean? What is adventure? Well, let's start by kicking off its breakdown of what an adventure card is, because I know it's been a minute, and then we'll go into the deck tech. Stand by. For those of you who don't know, adventure are cards that look like this. Originally introduced in Throne of Eldraine, and it receives some support inside of Battle for Baldur's Gate. It is a card that has a spell type effect on its left side, as well as a creature. So usually what you do is if you have this in your hand, you can cast it for its spell on the left side. In this case, it's an instant spell. And then this card is exiled instead of put into the graveyard. From exile, you may then cast a creature. Cast it in its creature form at a later time. That is what an adventure is, and that is how you do it. So going back to Gorion, he says whenever you cast the adventure side of cards, you can actually copy it and make double and target a different thing for a copy. So that's his idea in a nutshell. Let's get into the deck. This deck tech is going to be a very much control style deck, utilizing a lot of those copied spells from your adventures to control the battlefield and kind of start powering through with our creatures. So kicking it off, we have Giant's Killer. Its adventure side allows us to destroy a creature with power 4 or greater. It is a 1/2 human peasant. And for 2 mana, while it's a creature on your side of the field, for 2 mana, you can tap it to tap down a target creature. Very useful for board removal and battlefield control. Flaxen Intruder's next. It is a 1/2 1-drop. Its adventure is pretty expensive though. For 7 mana, you can create 3 bears, right? So those are going to be good as your fodder on the battlefield, as well as ways to attack in. Its main effect as a creature is whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. And if you do, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So a little bit of extra removal. This is going to be our ramp right here with the Rosethorn Acolyte. It is a 2/3 elf druid, and its adventure allows us to spend a green to add 1 mana of any color. So normally that would be a mana filter. But if we have Gorion on the field, when we activate its adventure, it'll allow us to actually net positive on this mana. So for 1 green, we can get 2 mana of any color. And then after that point, you can just treat it like a mana dork, tapping it for 1 mana. Mysterious Pathlighter is not an adventure card, but it does support the archetype. 2/2 Flying Fairy, whenever each creature you control that has an adventure enters the battlefield, it enters with a additional 1/1 counter. So let's say you cast this from your hand, it'll enter with a +1/+1 counter. Let's say you put it in you cast its adventure first and then put it on the battlefield at a later time, it'll come in with a 1/1 counter. The trick is, so long as it has an adventure on this side, it's going to get a +1/+1 counter, so long as the Pathlighter's on board. Lovestruck Beast. This is a deceptive, excuse the pun, beast on the battlefield. So its adventure side creates a 1/1 human, and it's a 3 mana 5/5, so pretty destructive early on. The only catch is it can't attack or block unless you control a 1/1 creature. Now we do have a bunch of 1/1 creatures in this deck, but using Gorion as well as the adventure side of this card, we're going to be creating a lot of 1/1 beasts, ensuring that we'll always have blockers and always have a reason for the beast to keep fighting. Throwing in an Illithid Scholar. Now, this is where we get into a bit of the bouncing aspect of the deck. Not flicker, bounce. So, whenever, what the Illithid Scholar says is a 3/2 horror. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So what we're looking to do, what we're hoping to do, is say we have our Love-Struck Beast on the field and a 1/1 human. We swing out with the Love-Struck Beast, it gets blocked, and then it's bounced to our hand. So we can then use its adventure side again. Alright, so Gorion's, the Illithid Scholar is very good for this. And its secondary effect is nothing to scoff at either. Whenever it deals combat damage, we're drawing. Ardenvale Tactician, another one of my favorites. A 2/3 human knight with flying, but its adventure side allows us to tap 2 creatures an opponent controls. So it's an instant speed adventure, so it can be done before your opponents declare attackers. It can be done to open the way for our creatures to attack. Ardenvale Tactician, fantastic for control. I also threw in a Tribute Mage. This is a secret tool that'll be useful later. It allows us to search for an artifact so long as it costs 2 mana or less. Oh no, so long as it casts exactly 2 mana. You can reveal it and put it into your hand. We use this to find a very specific card, which I'll talk about when we get to the artifacts. Blessed Hippogriff. 2/3 flying Hippogriff. For its adventure, an instant, target creature gains indestructible. A good way to protect Gorion while he's on the field. Pixie. 2/2 flying fairy. For 2 mana, we can give 3 other creatures on the field flying until the end of turn. Very good for the evasion. It's a swing through. Tamir Sabertooth. For 2 mana, we can return a creature to our hand, and if we do, this thing gains indestructible until the end of turn. This is once again allowing us to put our creatures into our hand so we can recast their adventure sides. Illithid Harvester. For X, it's a 4/4 horror, and its adventure is for X blue, you can tap target creatures and they don't untap during their controller's next end step. But here's the other thing. When it enters the battlefield, you can turn any number of target tapped creatures face down and force them to become horrors. If your opponent has some things that are really annoying, you can cast the adventure side and then immediately go into the Illithid Harvester to then make it a non-issue as a 2/2 no effect horror creature. Young Blue Dragon. 3/3 dragon with flying. Its adventure is a sorcery that lets us scry 1 and draw a card. Not bad, some extra card advantage. Always good to have. Pegasus Guardian. 3/3 flying Pegasus. At the beginning of its end steps, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, create a Pegasus. So that's its normal side effect. That's its creature effect. Very useful if we're bouncing things back to our hand. But the other effect is Rescue the Fowl. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield. That is a flicker. We're not really going to use the flicker side unless we're going to block something. So I've seen situations where the opponent swings in with something heavy. I block with my blue dragon and then immediately flicker it before the damage is dealt, so that the creature that your opponent was swinging with is blocked and we're able to save the power of our creature. Guardian Naga. This one's really good. A 5/6 Naga with Vigilance. So long as it's your turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to the Naga. Really good. It's got a nice adventure card, adventure side, so it can be useful early game. Exile target artifact or enchantment with the Naga's adventure. Sapphire Dragon. A 5/6 dragon with flying. Whenever it attacks or blocks, scry 2. Its adventure lets us counter a target non-creature spell. Once again, your opponent's breaking out a board wipe, breaking out a targeted removal. You're able to use the psionic side of it to counter it. Or, use the psionic pulse to counter it. Realm Cloak Dragon is our board wipe. It is a 7/7 giant with vigilance, and its adventure side destroys all non-giant creatures. So a very, very scary board wipe, because very rarely are you going to run against other players who have adventures or who have giants on their side of the board. Sword Coast Serpent. There we go. Sword Coast Serpent. A 6/6 sea dragon. It can't be blocked as long as you've cast a non-creature spell this turn. All of our ventures, our adventure sides of cards, are non-creatures when they're cast. So that means this thing will always be able to swing in. Now, its adventure side allows you to return a creature to its owner's hand. So just a bounce to anything on the field. So useful early game. And when it's late game, it allows you to swing in unblocked. Dreaded Lithoworm. 7/6 Sea Dragon. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or less. Very useful for the mid to late game. Its adventure allows us to put 2 +1/+1 counters on a target creature and untap it. Give it hexproof as well. So it's good for protection and just passive buffing our big things. This guy is what made me want to put the deck together. This came out in the newest set of Battle for Baldur's Gate, so it really tied into the adventure mechanic really well. It is a 7/7 Scorpion Scout. Its adventure allows us to exile a creature card from your graveyard, and until the end of turn, you may cast it. But that's not why we really want it. Its passive effect, aside from being a trampling 7/7, once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a creature spell you cast from exile. So if we have this guy in exile, our Lithoworm, or Linworm, excuse me, it's a 7 cost normally. But if he's on the board and it's the first thing we're going to cast from exile, this thing will be free. Very, very useful, this hunter. Love it. Shepherd of the Flock. Flock you. Okay. It's a 2 mana, 3/1 human peasant. But its instant is pretty good. Its adventure is really good. You can return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So just a nice bounce, once again, allowing us to capitalize and reusing those adventure sides. Alright, moving on. Continuing on, we have a Street Artist. Flash, Defender, Haste, 0/3. And for 2 mana and tapping it, you can copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. This works with our commander, right? So if we cast an adventure, he's going to copy it. And then for 2 more mana, she copies the copy. You guys following me? So instead of getting 1 cast of the adventure and then 2 casts from this guy, right? 1, 2, we're now going to have 3. 1 from the original venture, 1 from the first copy, and the second copy. Very useful, allowing us to maximize the actual use of our adventures. We're going to be doing this a lot too, so make sure you keep an eye on these kind of subtexts as we get into artifacts and other things like that. Where we're utilizing a lot of effects that allow us to copy the adventures as they're cast to get the full package out of them. Queen of Ice is another creature with an adventure, a 2/3. Its adventure side allows you to tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its untap step. Oh, my camera needs to focus. Hold on. Alright, there you go, Queen of Ice. Her actual effect is whenever she deals combat damage to a creature, it taps, and it doesn't untap until the next untap step. So very good for locking down very specific things. And if you have your Illithid Harvester, very good for just removing those things you've tapped down entirely. A Quandrix Apprentice is next. Move this further down. There you go. It has Magecraft. So Magecraft is a special keyword used for Strixhaven that just centers around whenever you cast a spell. Since all of our adventures are instants or sorceries, they're never enchantments, this guy will trigger off of those adventures. His effect is, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, look at the top 3 cards of your library and put a land from among them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom, allowing us to ramp a little bit earlier since he's only a 2-drop. Sage from Beyond, right? He is a 5/5 Spirit Giant. He has a foretell, just allowing us to maybe cheat him out a little bit earlier, but he's flying. Here is the important part. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. So those adventures cards, when we do eventually want to play the creature side of it, will be cheaper. The creature side of the card will be cheaper so long as he's on the field. So very useful. Next would be the Sky Summoner. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token. So whenever you cast your adventure, you're making dragons that fly. The Lonesome Unicorn is next. It is a 3/3 unicorn. Its adventure side allows us to create a 2/2 night creature token with vigilance. The unicorn itself also has vigilance. Excellent, more board presence. We're looking to swarm the board, and having multiple copies made from that is pretty useful. Next would be the Emerald Dragon, a flying trampler 4/4. Its adventure side allows us to counter a target activated ability or triggered ability from a non-creature source. So if your opponent's using an artifact to disrupt us very terribly, the Emerald Dragon can kind of stop that. Come here, you. Fairy Guide Mother is next. It is a 1/1 fairy, so remember that 1/1. It's useful for later because it helps us with the Love-Struck Beast. But it's a 1/1 fairy with flying. For 2 mana, target creature gains +1 or +2/+1 and flying until the end of turn. Very useful in just allowing things to get evasion and bigger, right? This is one of our biggest, heaviest hitters we got. Beanstalk Giant. Let's talk about its adventure first. For 3 mana, right, this giant can ramp for us. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, untapped, so it doesn't have to enter the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. It's a 7 mana cost card, but its effect, its main creature side effect, its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. This guy gets big, and he gets big fast. Sure, the lack of trample is something to be desired, but, and also he's a giant, so we survive our board wipe that we had earlier. But aside from him not having trample, we have a lot of things to give us more evasion, more flying. So Beanstalk Giant is very, very useful. We're nearing the end of our creatures though. Let's go into the Merry Thief. Her name, Alora, the Merry Thief. Whenever you attack, up to 1 target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Remember, we were talking about that Beanstalk Giant just a second ago. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. This is perfect for us. We swing in with a creature, make it unblockable, then it bounces back to our hand so we can use its adventure again. Huge helpful tool. Edgewall Innkeeper next. 1/1 Human Peasant. Whenever you cast a creature spell that has an adventure, draw a card. We have a lot of adventures, so we're going to get a lot of card draw. Great. Silver Flame Squire. It's a 2/1 human soldier. Its adventure allows us to give a creature +2/+2 and untap it. Since it's an instant, we can kind of do some trickery, some chicanery. If your opponent's swinging in and we're all tapped down on creatures, we can cast this to untap a creature and kind of surprise our opponent. It has no normal effect, just a 2/1 human soldier. Vega the Watcher is the name of the next card. Flying. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. Whenever we cast the creature side of our adventures from exile, we're going to get a card draw over it. The Oakham Ranger. Yep, that one. There we go. It is a 2/2 human knight. It can be tapped to give our creatures +1/+1 into the end of turn, and its adventure creates 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. Okay. The Sea Hag is next, a 5 mana 3/5, right? When it enters the battlefield, a creature your opponent controls gets -4 into the end of turn, right? All right, that's not terrible, but it'll be pretty good. It has very situational uses. I like the adventure side of it though. So for 3 mana, target up to 2 target creatures get +1 until the end of turn and can't be blocked. Right? The Crystal Dragon is one of our last creatures. It's a 4/4 flying dragon. It also has vigilance. Its adventure side allows us to return an artifact, enchantment, or legendary card from our graveyard to our hand. This will be useful once again for those that special artifact I keep mentioning. Crystal Dragon is fantastic. Alright, I like to keep it on hand to help just shore up, make sure I have all my defenses. The last creature I got to show you guys, one of our best ones, Dika the Fractal Theorist. She has a Magecraft. She's a 3/3 human wizard. Her Magecraft is this: whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a fractal that has +1/+1 counters equal to the spell's mana value. So whenever you cast, say, the instant or sorcery, the adventure side of your cards, you'll create a fractal. So in this case, 2/3, you'll create a 3 power health fractal creature token every time you cast an adventure side. Unfortunately, they don't double up. Let me just double check that. It's a fact check because I think I might have we might be figuring out some tech live on camera right now. No, it doesn't work. Like I said, this card is amazing. It's just sitting on the board, passively giving us more fractals to more board presence to kind of overwhelm your opponent with. Its activated ability isn't nothing to scoff at either. Target creature token can't be blocked this turn. So all those creature tokens that we've been making, now they can just swing in without getting stopped by our opponent. That's the last creature in the deck. Let's move on to artifacts. Kicking off artifacts with the Soul Ring. If you don't know it, you don't play Commander. Wayfarer's Bauble. Reprint means it's cheaper now, so very happy with this. Lightning Greaves. Right? Boots for protection. Swifty Boots for protection. Arcane Signet. Great for mana fixing. The Horn of Valhalla is one of the few artifacts that actually have a adventure side of it. Its adventure side is X white create that many 1/1 white creature tokens. So if you do 10 for the X, you create 10 1/1 soldiers. Its other side, since it's an equipped card, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control. So remember all those tokens we've been making throughout the game? Now with the Horn of Valhalla on something, it's going to turn one creature into a massive beater. Very good. I love the Horn of Valhalla. Portal of Sanctuary is our next artifact. It is 3 mana, and you can spend 1 to tap it, return target creature you control, and each aura attached to it to its owner's hand. So this allows us for 1 mana to bring a creature back to our hand and allow us to cast its adventures again. Very useful. You can only activate it during your turn. 2 more artifacts. These guys are the best things in this deck. The golden pigs, if you will. Alright, if I may steal from other YouTubers. Twinning Staff is the first thing. Whenever you would copy a spell 1 or more times, instead copy it that many times +1. So. Let's find our commander and talk about him real fast. Here he is. The Wise Mentor. Whenever you cast an adventure spell, you copy it. So now, say we cast the, I don't know, give me a good one. Let's go here. Giant Killer. Let's say your opponent had a board filled with 10 10s. I say had because he's not going to have it anymore. Spend the adventure, kill one of them. The copy is made off of Gorion, so we're going to kill another. Then the Twinning Staff triggers, so we're going to kill another. So off of one cast of Chop Down, we've killed 3 creatures with minimum 4 power, right? Amazing. You want to talk about amazing though? The final card, Lucky Clover. It's essentially our commander on an artifact. Whenever you cast an event and an instant or sorcery adventure, copy it and choose new targets for the copy. So now you want to do quick math again. We cast 1 adventure and we copy it 3 times. So we're getting four effects from 1 cast all together. Really, really, really good. This is the dream. Getting things like this on the board so that 1 cast is copying a bajillion times. Alright? That is the last artifact. Let's move on to enchantments. Seal of Removal. You can sacrifice it to return a creature to its owner's hand. Useful as a force bounce on your opponent, but really we're using it on ourselves to get more casts of our adventures. Cunning Evasion. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. We've talked about how good that is. Swarm Intelligence is next. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Once again, another way to bounce our adventures. Another way to cast our adventure, cast through time. Instant and sorcery spells you control have rebound. So what happens now? When you cast an adventure, it's cast and then exiled, right? And obviously if you had a commander or an effect doubler, it would, double up. Then it's cast again at the start of your next turn, right? It won't get bounced like copied another times, but it's a really good just another cast because we're casting it through time. Last card we got on our enchantments, Primeval's Bounty. Amazing card. It is a 6 mana card. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 3/3 beast creature token. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put 3 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. And whenever a land enters the battlefield, gain 3 life. It's an expensive card, but just having this on the board creates a ridiculous amount of value that we can just keep using because we're casting our adventures, copying casts of our adventures, and then putting those adventures into play as creatures. It's just allowing us to get a lot of different positive results from it. That's our last enchantment. Let's talk about sorceries. Next up, we have Brainstorm. This is for our instants and sorceries. Draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your library. Familiar Ruse. Return, as an additional cost to this, you have to bounce something to your hand, but you can also counter a spell once you cast it. So there is really no downside here. For 2 blue mana, we're going to counter a spell and return one of our adventures back to our hand to cast it again. Once Upon a Time. If it's in your opening hand, you can play if this is the first spell you cast each turn, you can play it for free. But its secondary effect is not bad either for 2 mana. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. Of course, we have Rampant Growth for ramp, Edge of Autumn for ramp, Search for Tomorrow, Grow from Ashes, just the ramps, the Far Seek, you gotta have that too, right? So, just some ramps in there. Stolen by the Fae. Bounce target creature with converted mana cost X to its owner's hand. You create X blue fairy creature tokens with flying. So, we can pay, let's say your opponent has an 8/8 on board. You have to pay 10, but you'll bounce that creature, or you'll have to pay 10, to bounce that creature back to your opponent's hand, and you make 8 fairies. Useful, useful, useful. Run Away Together. One of the reasons why I made this deck is because I love the art on this card. For 2 mana, choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hand. This is great for us. We bounce something we want and get rid of something we don't want from our opponent's side of the field. Peel from Reality does something similar. Return target creature you control and target creature you don't control to their owner's hand. So it's about the same thing. The Bant Charm has multiple uses. You can destroy a target creature, put a creature on the bottom of its owner's library, or counter target instant spell. A little bit of targeted removal here in Resculpt. You exile an artifact or creature, and then your opponent creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental. The last instant sorcery spell we got is Cleansing Nova. 5 mana. I can choose to destroy all creatures or all artifacts and enchantments. Use this very sparingly, but we use this as a big red button, like, oh no, he's too big, and just wiping something from your opponent's side of the field. Those are all the spells. Let's talk about lands. It's time to finish the lands. We got our Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Opal Palace, Evolving Wilds. Okay, now we have some tap or dual lands. We got a Prairie Stream, we got a Canopy Vista, and a Seaside Citadel. The rest are basics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plains. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 islands. Finally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 forests. That kind of puts our whole mana base together. Let's go back to our commander and finish off with closing thoughts. Guys, right before we go into our commander, I just want to talk about this. Let's say you cast the sorcery, 1 green mana for 1 mana of any color, right? You cast the adventure, and you have Gorion, the Wise Mentor, on the field, right? As well as a Lucky Clover, and a Twinning Staff, and Swarm Intelligence, and the Street Artist. You're getting, for 1 green mana, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana back. Okay? That's not even counting Cast Through Time, where you're able to cast that card at the beginning of your next upkeep, potentially doubling up on all of these effects again. That's the dream, obviously, but like, what a dream it could be. So, what can be said about Gorion, the Wise Mentor? So, here's the thing, guys. I built this deck. I love the concept of the deck. It's not ready. It's not. What does that mean? This deck is fun to play, but whatever table you sit down with needs to have only playing precons or slightly upgraded precons, because that is all that this deck can handle. Anything more than that, it kind of like falls. It falters. Looking at if I sit down at a table against a Corvold, this thing is not holding up. That being said, though, this is extremely fun, and I really feel like this entire adventure archetype is one expansion short from actually being good. It just needs one final finishing oomph to the deck. And hopefully you guys are smarter than me. You'll be able to figure out what that oomph could be before we wait for the next expansion that brings us adventure. All that being said, this has been Gorion, the Wise Mentor. Thank you guys for checking me out. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next video.